All right. So anyway, the Chinese Song Dynasty, Song, just like it sounds, might not be pronounced that way. I believe it is, but again, any foreign names or titles, if I ever mispronounce them and you've heard it a different way, raise your hand. Let me know because I am really not great with pronunciation of any given other cultures, titles, or language. So the Song Dynasty ran from roughly 960 to 1279 Common Era, again CE, AD, whichever you prefer. I prefer CE. Yes, absolutely. So, and this is again based on battles and rises to power. So when I give a specific date, sometimes I'll say circa, and around this date. This one I say circa 960 to 1279. 1279 is a hard date. As we get further into it, I'll give you a specific day in there that it is. There's a reason it's 1279 to end. Circa 960 to 1279, and oversaw enormous growth in economic stability, uniformity, and of course those monetary values that I mentioned earlier. Stability is good for money. From 1279, and again, that exact date on that one, to 1368, and yes, again, exact date on that one, the Mongol rule of China would be, again, every bit as powerful in the trading world. The Mongols actually took very good care of what was formerly the Chinese Silk Road. I do not like to rely heavily on this because it's a Disney movie, obviously, but a lot of people get mistaken when they think Mulan and they remember the big invasion scene like that. I forget when I looked last, but I want to say that was actually a prior invasion that they were basing the Mulan story off of. It's irrelevant, but a lot of people think, or at least generation I have ever taught, think Mulan when they think of this. I just want to caution you, not always true. All right, so it is, of course, during this time that the story of Marco Polo, if any of you ever played that swimming pool game, Marco Polo. Yeah, he was actually a Venetian or Italian from Venice, trader, silk merchant, I believe, or a clothes merchant, cloth merchant. Might have been a spice merchant. I'm going to have to look up that again. But he was traveling along the Silk Road and joined the Great Khan's court and stayed there for a goodly number of years. And the capital city of Hanzhou, Huangzhou, again, not good at pronouncing. He compared in 1295, or rather until 1295 when he left, from 1271 to 1295, he compared that city to any of the finest in the world. And again, as a Venetian from, somewhere that was fairly beautiful by architectural standards, he was measuring it up against quite a lot. And again, the court of the Khan, he stayed there for 71 to 95. Someone who wants to do the quick math on that for me, 24 years. I mean, that's a good chunk of anyone's life now, let alone then when people weren't living as long. So, again, reading up a little bit on Marco Polo, watching the Netflix show. I don't advocate it for history, but it does, again, give you a feel if you want to visualize what maybe the court of the Khan looked like, what maybe some of these people were dressed as. There are actual jobs in film and stage where your entire job is to research and get that correct. Like, people want to know that they're looking at something that is accurate. And Marco Polo on Netflix, again, I've not done my research to know it's 100%. But, as people go through history in their mind, I think a lot of times we don't remember when inventions actually occurred in history. And at least I am guilty of thinking, wow, the 1900s, God, they couldn't have had any of this stuff. And then you realize it was invented in like the 1600s. So, again, just to give a little feel for a little more historic, place and setting, check the show out. It's pretty good. He reported on the splendor and wealth of the merchants and the city of Huangzhou. Again, apologies if I ripped that apart. Let's see, post 1368, so at the end of the Mongol Empire, the Ming Empire expanded the Chinese naval influence, if you will. They made what were called the swimming or floating dragons, which I forget the exact measurement, but I want to say they were around 400 feet long, a little bit bigger than a football field, and 150 feet wide. They were crewed by roughly 1,000 sailors each. And again, in the Ming Empire, there was a great look abroad for open places to increase more trade and make more money. Let's face it, every empire is trying to make the money. The Ming, however, had a very famous admiral named Admiral Zheng He, which is spelled Z-H-E-N-G. Z-H-E-N-G. Zheng He, which is actually spelled H-E, but from what I have read in the book is pronounced like He. So I'm going to call him Admiral He for purposes of this. He took a very, very, very large fleet of those swimming/floating dragons, 9-masted enormous boats, full of treasure, full of horses, full of, goods to trade, and then sent his fleet out. Admiral He was with them as they floated from China all the way down around India. They'd done that for years, whatever. And then they came along here. And oh, look, we're over at Africa. And they started bouncing down the coast. And a lot of places over to Madagascar as well. And they made it all the way down to about here. There's a major river that dumps in right there. And they figured it was a good turning around spot. Because the further down you get, the further south you get towards the Cape, it's a lot rougher seas, a lot more dangerous to travel. And he had made his point. The huge fleet had taken and opened up trade throughout the eastern coast, especially of Africa. Those horses, those goods that he had taken, great gifts make great trading partners. Oh, you can bring me this, and your ship is enormous. Yes, we will be good trading partners with you. Here's some of what we want to send back. We'll take those horses. Thank you very much. Everybody's happy. He did a great job, and he is, again, Admiral He is very much credited with expanding the Ming Dynasty's, naval presence, obviously, but also those all-important trade routes. So he is definitely going to appear on a quiz, probably. He's one of your vocab terms. Just to key you into that. You probably already guessed it. So the trade allowed later leaders to grow urban developments throughout China, which was, again, that unification thing we were talking about earlier. These centers, of course, facilitated trade in silk, cotton, and other food items. Rice is one that's frequently thought of from this area of the world. That brings us to an end on China. Let me check my time, make sure we're not over. Nope, we got 28 minutes. Hot dog. So, as I just mentioned China, move one to the left. We're going to India now. And especially, again, trade in India. Let's see. Someone throw a number out. And again, those of you who have read, if you've made a note of this, not you. Oldest boat that could actually, function as a, transport goods. How far back are we looking? Throw a number out. How far back do you think it goes?
200 some years ago.
How far?
100,000 years.
Little less. Actually goes back about 3,000 years to 1000 BCE. That is the first, at least in India, noted occurrence of a waterborne vessel capable of mass trade. So from that point on, so again, circa 1000 BCE, you start seeing an increase in the trade, not only within India itself along waterways, but increasingly, again, coastlines, east and west. So with that, remember how I said this is happening simultaneously to China, by the way, how I said that Islam was spreading along trade routes? Well, as it got to India, along with the Arab traders that were coming from North Africa and what we consider the Middle East now, it had butted heads with the other two, at least two, local religions, Hinduism and Buddhism. These were, at least historians believe, from the southern points of India. So as Hinduism and Buddhism moved up through India, at roughly the same time, you had the African traders that were bringing Islam, and I say African, Middle Eastern traders as well, bringing Islam across the northern parts of India. So even today, if you look in those areas, especially ones that have been divided off after 1947, you get like Pakistan, a lot of the divisions that we see there are still along similar religious lines where it's Islam on one side and not Islam on the other. So again, it carries through even until today. History matters, even if it's a little boring when I tell you about it. So the religion is not the only thing that follows trade routes. As I mentioned earlier, other ideas, political ideas. Hey, you don't like the way you're being ruled and you hear a story from this trader that comes along bringing you goods. I got it so good because my ruler is, he's a nice guy. He looks out for us and he encourages trade. So we all get rich. And then you're living under a not so great form of government over here where it's like, hey, we're warring tribes that none of us get along and none of us ever get ahead. We're all just kind of surviving. What are you going to do with that new information? Me, if it was me, I would go back and very discreetly, so I didn't get stoned to death by the village elders, start talking to my friends going, hey, what if we all just agreed to agree? And then we work together for this and we talk to the other people because I heard this great idea from this trader that I know. And he says that it's not so bad to live in that kind of system. It's how ideas spread, right? Word of mouth. Someone wants something that they don't have. In some cases, it's political leadership, in a sense. So, monarchical concepts, kings especially, those concepts followed along the trade routes. Through India, you'll end up seeing things like, sultans, etc. We'll get to that in a little bit. Now, I say that without having done much research beyond what's in the textbook. So there are many, many levels of political life in any of these countries that we're going to look at that we don't even touch on. So know that what I am giving you is a very surface level of what these events in history is all about. So let's see. Aha. Monarchical concepts also followed the Southeast Asian concepts that we've already discussed, as did certain social principles that elevated the status of women above most European standards of the time. So again, just giving you the overview, some other things that you might mention in a discussion question of what all besides items of physical value came along a trade route. Well, I'm going to need you to be able to tell me some concepts, some ideas. That's certainly one of them. Political rule is one of them. Diseases would be one of them. Everybody getting a feel for what you might need in your notes? Good. Awesome. Because I don't want to banter on like this forever in all of the classes. I do want it to be where we are talking back and forth, and it's not just me. Information. Sadly, until we get through that part of the chapter, we can't do the other part. Is that so good? Good deal. It's going to have to be because that's how it is. All right, so the growth of Islam, which is, of course, as everything else in this course, playing at the same time as other things throughout history and around the world are happening. So from circa 750 to 1258, Common Era, we had the Abbasid Caliphate. The ruler was actually from Spain to China, and the capital was Baghdad. Now, I'm pretty sure if I said raise your hand if you've heard of Baghdad in modern terms, everybody would raise their hand. Yeah. There's a reason for that. But it is, in fact, the same Baghdad that we're talking about here. It's how it got its start. So there you go. The control of trade across the Mediterranean Sea and Indian Ocean area, which is again up on the map, allowed Islam to spread, especially via the Red Sea. It was very popular among the Swahili-speaking areas in North Africa. The spread of Islam was especially large in cities like Kilwa, Kilwa, Mogadishu, which, again, don't worry about writing those down. Just know that Islam built up in large central points and became, points of study and religious purpose within his